Once Craig Jackson, Jason Billups, and Mustang historian Kevin Marty authenticated the car, speculation ended. The mystery was solved. This was indeed the missing Shelby GT500 EXP prototype. A car believed lost forever had quietly survived for more than 50 years. But why did its survival matter so much? Prototype cars rarely survive because companies usually have every reason to eliminate them. Experimental parts create liability. Engineering ideas become outdated. Designs evolve. Once testing ends, prototypes often disappear forever. Little Red should have followed the same fate. Instead, it became one of the few surviving windows into Carroll Shelby's creative process. Production cars reveal what companies were willing to sell. Prototypes reveal what they dared to imagine before compromise stepped in. Little Red and the Green Hornet also proved how far ahead Shelby was thinking. The Green Hornet tested independent rear suspension, electronic fuel injection, and four-wheel disc brakes long before those ideas became common. Little Red explored supercharging, big block performance, and styling concepts that pushed the Mustang beyond its limits. These were not random experiments. They were glimpses into the future. Years later, many of those ideas would become reality on modern performance cars. Shelby was not simply following trends. He was trying to create them. One of Little Red's most lasting contributions came through the 1968 Mustang California Special. Its styling helped inspire that production model, meaning Little Red quietly influenced thousands of Mustangs even while everyone believed the prototype itself had disappeared. For decades, enthusiasts admired parts of its design without realizing the original source still existed. It was like discovering the missing first draft of a famous novel after generations had already read the finished version. Perhaps Shelby's greatest secret was never a hidden garage or one incredible car. It was the culture of experimentation he created. Shelby constantly pushed Ford beyond its comfort zone. Ford provided resources, engines, and manufacturing power. Shelby brought bold ideas, racing experience, and a willingness to ignore convention. That partnership produced legendary production cars, but it also created experimental machines like Little Red that tested possibilities long before they became reality. Isn't that where true innovation really begins? Finding Little Red created one more difficult question. Should it remain exactly as it was found, complete with rust, missing parts, and decades of wear? Or should it be restored to running condition? Some believed every scratch told part of its remarkable story. Others argued Shelby built cars to drive, not to sit silently under museum lights. Restoring it, they said, honored Shelby's spirit more than preserving its decay ever could. Craig Jackson and the restoration team chose a careful middle ground. They brought Little Red back to life while documenting every step of the process. Restoring a prototype is far more difficult than restoring a production car because there is no exact blueprint to follow. Engineers had changed the car throughout its testing life, meaning the team had to decide which moment in its history they wanted to preserve. It was as much historical research as mechanical work. In January 2020, Little Red returned to the public at Barrett-Jackson in Scottsdale, Arizona. For the first time ever, both legendary Shelby notchback prototypes, Little Red and the Green Hornet, stood together. What had once been little more than rumors and faded photographs now stood in front of thousands of people. The discovery proved that history is never completely settled. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not found because of luck. They are found because someone refuses to accept the obvious answer. Collectors treasure Little Red because it combines everything that makes automotive history unforgettable. It is incredibly rare, deeply influential, and wrapped in one of the greatest detective stories the hobby has ever seen. It was the only GT500 coupe built by Shelby American, one of just two experimental notchback Shelbys, a prototype connected to future Mustang styling, a car believed destroyed, and a vehicle recovered after decades of failed searches. Every part of its story adds another layer to its importance. More than anything, Little Red reminds us that history is never finished. Somewhere, another forgotten prototype could still be sitting beneath years of dust, hidden by incorrect paperwork, mistaken identity, or simple neglect. Sometimes the greatest discoveries are not waiting in glamorous collections. They are waiting for someone willing to ask one different question and follow one forgotten number all the way to the truth. For decades, car fans believed Carroll Shelby's strangest Mustang had vanished forever. It was not hidden in a private collection. It was not locked away in a secret garage. Everyone thought it had been destroyed. Then one research team followed what seemed like a dead-end rumor, uncovered the right VIN number, and stumbled onto a forgotten red coupe sitting quietly in rural Texas. It looked like just another worn-out Mustang, but it was something far more important. Once experts realized what they had found, it completely changed what collectors knew about Shelby's secret experiments. But how did one of the most famous lost cars in American history disappear in the first place? Before Carroll Shelby became a legend, he was simply a Texas racer with an incredible instinct for speed and a heart condition that nearly ended his career. He never approached cars like ordinary machines. To Shelby, they were living things that could always be improved. He raced hard, won often, and in 1959 captured victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans with Aston Martin alongside Roy Salvadori. Soon afterward, his failing heart forced him to retire from racing. For most people, that would have been the end of the dream. For Shelby, it became the beginning of something much bigger. If he could no longer beat Europe behind the wheel, he would do it by building faster cars. That thinking led to the Shelby Cobra. Shelby looked at the lightweight British AC Ace and imagined what would happen if it carried a powerful American V8. The result was loud, aggressive, and unlike anything else on the road. Shelby's formula was simple. Combine European handling with American horsepower and strip away everything unnecessary. The Cobra shocked the racing world and proved Shelby was more than just a former driver. But an even bigger challenge was waiting for him. Could he help Ford take on Ferrari? By the mid-1960s, Ford desperately wanted to beat Ferrari at Le Mans. The company had money, engineers, and determination, but lacked Shelby's racing instincts. When Shelby American stepped in, the GT40 transformed from a promising project into a true race winner. Ford finally defeated Ferrari at Le Mans in 1966 and continued winning for years afterward. Shelby became the man manufacturers called whenever they needed real performance instead of empty promises. At the same time, Ford wanted to give the Mustang genuine racing credibility. Shelby answered with the GT350 and later the GT500, turning an everyday pony car into something far more dangerous. But the most fascinating Shelbys were never sold to the public. So where did they go? Behind every famous performance car are forgotten prototypes. These experimental machines tested engines, suspension setups, styling ideas, and new technology. Once their job was done, many were crushed or quietly discarded. Back then, nobody imagined collectors would one day pay fortunes for them. Companies cared about deadlines, racing victories, and production schedules, not preserving history. That made one missing prototype especially mysterious. A car known simply as Little Red disappeared without a trace, and for decades, almost everyone accepted the same explanation. It had been destroyed. Little Red was unlike any Shelby most people picture. It was a 1967 Shelby GT500 EXP prototype, but instead of being a fastback, it was a notchback coupe. Along with another experimental car called the Green Hornet, it became one of only two notchback Shelbys ever built. Yet its importance went far beyond its unusual body style. Little Red served as a rolling laboratory where Shelby American and Ford tested powerful engines, supercharging ideas, styling changes, and concepts that would later influence future Mustangs. It was never meant to become a production car. It existed to answer one question. How far could Shelby push the Mustang? Collectors knew the car had existed. Old photographs survived. Documents mentioned it. Stories circulated for years. Yet nobody could find the actual car. Since so many prototypes from that era had been crushed, the simplest explanation seemed true. Little Red was gone forever. But automotive history has taught one lesson over and over again. Just because paperwork says a car is gone does not always mean it really is. That realization would eventually change everything. The search truly gained momentum because of another legendary prototype called the Green Hornet. Owned by Barrett Jackson chairman Craig Jackson, the Green Hornet featured advanced ideas that were decades ahead of their time, including electronic fuel injection, four-wheel disc brakes, and independent rear suspension. While restoring that remarkable car, Jackson and restoration expert Jason Billups kept asking the same question. If one experimental Shelby survived, could another have escaped destruction too? Instead of chasing old rumors, Billups focused on the paperwork. Everyone had searched for Little Red using its Shelby serial number. Every search ended in failure. Then the team realized something crucial. The car actually had two identities. It carried both a Shelby serial number and its original Ford VIN. Nobody had seriously followed the Ford trail. Could the answer have been hiding there all along? That decision changed everything. Once researchers followed the Ford VIN instead of the Shelby number, forgotten ownership records, registrations, and documents began falling into place. The trail eventually pointed toward North Texas. Suddenly, the mystery looked very different. Little Red had not been impossible to find. Everyone had simply been searching under the wrong identity. Sometimes one number is all it takes to rewrite history. On March 3, 2018, the search finally ended. Sitting among old vehicles in rural North Texas was a rough, weathered Mustang shell. The engine was gone. The transmission was missing. Parts had been removed, and years of neglect had taken their toll. To almost anyone else, it looked worthless. But to experts studying the VIN, body details, and historical clues, it was nothing less than the holy grail of Shelby history. Could this really be the car everyone believed had been crushed? The location made the discovery even more remarkable. Little Red had not survived because someone carefully protected it. It survived through confusion, neglect, ownership changes, and pure luck. Since few people understood what it truly was, nobody destroyed it. Nobody restored it either. It simply drifted through time unnoticed. That accidental survival made it far more extraordinary than any carefully preserved museum piece.